Hi, my name is Eric, and I've been coming to People Church for about 5 years now.
I'm Whitney. I've been going to People for a year.
So my name is Brianna Ford. I have been at People Church for 3 years now.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Cole.
We're married.
Yes, we are married. We've been coming to People Church for the past 4 years.
My name is Ian. I'm an intern here at People Church. I've been here a year, and
I'm Bob Schmidt. I've been attending People Church for about 2 years now.
My name is Alex.
And my name is Camila.
We are Brazilians. We just moved from London. We lived there for 10 years. We arrived here 5 months ago. It's just a pleasure to have found People Church. We can definitely call People Church home.
My family is a transracial family. We felt called to build our family through adoption. My son's from China and my daughter's from Ethiopia. There's a lot to celebrate in our family, but it also does bring some challenges, especially in the past years, dealing with trauma in some of my kids' lives. It was Gio's message, I think it was the first message of the year, where he quoted Isaiah 43, where it says,
I am the Lord, your Holy One, Israel's Creator, your King. 16 says, this is what the Lord says, he who made a way through the sea, a path through the mighty waters, who drew out the chariots and the horses, the armies and reinforcements together, and they lay there, never to rise again, extinguished, snuffed out like a wick. But the fact of the matter is, if you even look throughout the scriptures when Jesus was here on earth, he did miracles, right? He healed the blind and he raised people from the dead, right? But he did it in different ways. There wasn't a process or a system to it. And I think it's because he wants us to focus on the source more than anything else. If we get too comfortable with how it's done, we forget who's doing it, right? So if we get comfortable with the same old way that he moves in my life, how are we gonna continue to focus on the actual source who is providing the breakthrough, the abundance, the provision, the things that we want to see in our lives? So all that to say is that God is doing a new thing. He wants to do a new thing, but are we willing to let him do a new thing?
and it was right about that time. I just felt a shift in hope. It felt like we were going into 2022, maybe with a new start. Those verses have really become the verses for my year. Thinking about too how, God has led me and my wife to new jobs this year. My wife has gone back to teaching ESL, something she's really gifted at and is able to share the love of God through. And I started a new job too, and I was pretty reluctant, to be honest. I was at my last job for 15 years, and it's the one area in my life I think I was unwilling to step out of my comfort zone. And God just kept telling me to do this. He kept coming back with this job and opening the doors, and I finally said, you know what, I think God's got something here, and I had to believe in him for it. Some of the past ministries we've done with vulnerable children and the challenges we faced, and I see a vision for God too that may involve in the future helping other people that have been through trauma. And wow, if that's the way God's gonna take me, if that's the vision for me and my wife and others in my family, wow. I don't know what that's gonna bring, but I know God is gonna change lives through it.
Vision Sunday is the way for everybody to aim and really know what we're going for as a community, as a family.
There was such fire and passion and boldness in the room on Vision Sunday. The belief in the room was so high.
And so every year we ask God, as a ecosystem, as your body, what is the word for your people, for us as a church, not an organization, an organism that is alive and breathing. And this year, the word that we feel over our church that we want you to grab hold of for yourself and for us, whether in Toronto or in future campuses, no matter where you are, the word is audacious.
Pastor Chris and Audrey gave us this word, audacious.
The tagline for it was, audacity needs nothing like you actually are required to have nothing in order to be audacious. That was the biggest encouragement because we didn't have anything. Pastor Chris did it well when he came on Vision Sunday, and he basically was as transparent as he possibly could be.
I'm asking you to follow me into nothing. I'm asking you to meet me at somewhere that I don't know where it is, with a goal that I can't really speak about, with the fact that I'm aware that our first lease will be soon and that our next building is probably going to cost us $100 million, and I don't know where it's going to come from, and I'm standing here, but I got to say that I would stand nowhere else in no other fashion.
It's very humbling for us as a church to be at a place where we're so dependent on God to move on our behalf.
Wow, that resonated with me. You don't have it all figured out? Like, I can too. It really kind of took the parameters off of the things it just didn't make sense to believe for. Things happened this year that were legitimately impossible. Like, not just like, oh, there's a small chance, but it's like there's no way that could actually happen.
God really spoke to me through that word because I was in the process of realizing, you know, like, this beautiful girl and I started chatting. I was living in the US and she was in Canada, and very early on in the courtship I was like, just so you know, I don't foresee myself moving to Canada ever. I just want to be upfront with you. And then less than a year later I'm like making plans to move to Canada, which is terrifying. And it's really easy to wonder, like, man, I'm leaving my dream job and I'm leaving the place where I grew up and I don't really know anyone there, and this is really scary. But I specifically remember that day at church, God speaking to me like, this is scary and it is a big deal, but I'm calling you here. I'm preparing a place for you, and I'm making a new way. And be bold, be audacious, trust me. I know you don't know where the end is, where this journey will take you, but you know me, and I'm gonna be there with you wherever you go. People Church is a massive reason we decided against our original plan, which was Nichelle coming to the US. The Lord was moving through our hearts powerfully in like the months leading up to our engagement and marriage, and He did that through the actual people.
I moved here 5 years ago from India, and I always kept praying, Lord, I need this community that I had back home. Like, I would serve in my home church in Mumbai, and I made people who were new, I would make them feel welcomed in church. And for some reason, I didn't feel that way when I just moved here. I tried going to a couple of churches, to be honest. But I felt so welcome from the first day that I came to People Church, which was August of last year, and I think I can speak for you as well. So having that community here really has helped us, and as we stepped into marriage just a few months ago, having couples and people who have gone through this journey for a few years advising us, giving us wisdom is so helpful.
If the Garden of Eden is the creation story, the cross is the recreation story.
I think to describe it as an experience is like the best word, I think, for that day.
We cannot celebrate the resurrection without actually living a resurrection-themed life.
Like, it's nighttime and taking us to what I imagine would have been this garden experience. I know we did really cool things, but that was definitely next level.
And we're gonna chase after Jesus like never before, People Church. We're gonna chase after what the cross signifies: salvation, deliverance, redemption, and purpose.
Retreat is a 3-day trip where all of our staff and volunteers get together and just spend 3 days of just worshiping. The staff are asked to give, you know, a mini sermon. You know, a lot of fun at the same time. You know, we have a dodgeball tournament, which is super cool.
Didn't have a ton of expectation and just like wanted to come in with an open heart about what it could be. And it ended up just being like everything. Like, I laughed, I cried, I got really amazing words of encouragement. Like, everyone felt like family. feels as if these people are just sitting on the other side of a coffee with me, because speaking so directly to the questions I was having, like real time. Like I walked away really with just a different mindset about everything. So like I came to Chicago with a very clear plan. It was about me like returning home and like how can I help out the community that I grew up in, like literally had a business plan and was very focused on that. Very much so an achiever, go-getter, and like through retreat and like literally the words that were given to me, all of the messages, I had this moment of just surrendering that, a moment of understanding that this is great to be, or good to be chasing after a calling, chasing after an assignment, but it has to be in its proper place. It can never be priority or first above my pursuit of God. That was a really big moment for me, because in my coming back to Chicago and in my finding People Church again, and like many of us in, quarantine and social distancing, like I experienced a huge transition with family and friends and the way I related to people. And essentially I was really desiring and like really sowing into and wanting to find my people again and wanting to find community again. And that moment in particular, I just had this like, wait, like this is it? Like there's so many people in this room I can call friend.
Just the worship was just so powerful. And I just remember thinking, I was like, there's nothing more that you could ever do than to build the church and to bring hope to the lost. And I would just think about it would make me think of when I was just, I used to cry myself to sleep at one point, alone in my room, and thinking that there was like no hope to be found. And in that moment at retreat, I remember God like just saying, you have found it and it's yours. Like I've given it to you freely, and now it's time for you to give it to other people.
Whatever the Sunday was when guys had gotten back from retreat, that Sunday worship was bananas. It was like everybody went to the mountain and came back with a new glory.
Love everything that YoPro has done this year, and I remember in particular this finance event and just the vulnerability and transparency and the practicals that every panelist shared. Also felt like really affirmed when I got to that space, because I looked around and I felt connected to most people in the room, and having this like aha moment for the first time of like, oh, like these are my people. And I'm incredibly grateful to just everyone involved in the ministry for creating these spaces so that you can, not only connect with people on a Sunday, but connect with people midweek and really build friendships and relationships.
So 5 years ago, my oldest daughter, Tasha, invited us to People Church. During the service, it was just spirit-filled and powerful, and the message and everything. And then they had about 25 young leaders that were down front. And I said, well, let's find out how they can pray. Very quickly, I was like, this is real. These guys are the real deal. He knew the right words at the right time with the right message, almost like he knew what I came in with my heart, and just spoke words of life into me and broke things off of me and just lifted my spirits, and I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, so around June, when Pastor Audrey and Pastor Chris visited our church, during that time, my syndrome, my symptoms was at peak, and I was invited in a breakfast event with women leaders in the church, and I was really not myself at that point. And Pastor Audrey noticed that, and she asked me what's wrong, and I shared it to her, and she asked if I'm open for deliverance, and I said yes. And during that moment, every woman in that room prayed over me and help me renounce anything that I need to renounce, especially my PMDD. And when we did renounce that, I felt incredible pain in my lower back, which always happens to me all the time. And when I got healed, I know that I was healed because that pain actually left me at that moment. Exactly 1 month after the deliverance, I had the supernatural joy. The Holy Spirit just told me that I'm pregnant, and I was just believing that I'm pregnant at that day, July 7. And then the next day, I did my pregnancy test, and it was positive. And now I'm 26 weeks pregnant with a baby girl.
Most times I'm reluctant to go up. Where you're like, okay, well, I just went up last month. It's fine. There's not enough people up there. You'll make every excuse in the book. But there's been so many times I've gone up and God spoke directly to a thing, directly to a situation.
I go in expectantly now. I know they're going to bless me. It's like they're speaking right into the center of my soul, right into my heart.
If you've never gone up for that prayer line, God has something for you specifically.
We were so welcomed, by Eric and Frank.
Our wedding anniversary was in September, and like 2 weeks before, Erica called me and said, "Oh, I want to look after the girls so you guys can go out and have a time for yourselves." I was like, "Oh my God, this is so great," because I didn't even ask her. She came to our place and stayed with the girls and did all the routine, put them to bed. Like we felt so, so loved.
So hard for people to start a life in Canada, and having people around you who loves you, who cares for you, who supports you, that means a lot. And that's something that I believe changed us, and that made it easier for us to start our life here in Canada. And the same thing that's actually happening right now in our members.
It makes total difference, mainly for us because we just arrived here, we don't know anybody, and we feel home.
We saw people coming through Grow Track and feeling called to be a part of this church and really taking on what we believe in as a church. And throughout this year, it's been beautiful.
Honestly, I went kind of as a checking off a box type of thing. Just to say, all right, God, I did it. Now we're done. We can move on from whatever you're trying to do here. I was really glad that I went because it also just let me know what People Church was about, and it was fun too. It tied my heart more so to the vision of the house. It must have been that second week of Growth Track where all of the ministry kind of leaders and stuff come, and a few people had asked me what I had done previously because I was going to a church for so long back home. And I had previously done worship, media, ministry, drama, and all of that stuff. And I was really not in the mood to talk about any of those things. But I can't remember, it was somebody that kind of dragged me over to Erica Barreto. And I told her, that I had previously done worship, but I was really just trying to pull back. And before I had done ministry as an obligation. Like, it just felt like because I had the talent, I should be up there, and that's just the bottom line. It was almost like just clocking in and clocking out, and I didn't want to do that here. So I told her that flat out, and I said I would need some time, but it was just such a special moment. Like, I could tell instantly that she didn't care what the talent was. She cared about who I was as a person and what I had to offer as me individually. And she prayed with me, and it was just really a special thing. And I think she said something like, you're what we've been waiting for. And it just kind of, it shocked me, but in a good way.
The reality is, this is our last Sunday here at Logan Square Auditorium. We have been here for 1 year, and before that, we were the Nomad Church, traveling from venue to venue, because we were saying we won't stop. We cannot stop, because there is a vision, and there are people on the other side.
We were in LSA for about a year, and it just took, it took a really long time for us to get back to Clemente, and there was just a lot of different details that had to be worked out. But finally in August, everything came together, and I think it's in perfect with God's timing.
We're not going home, we're going somewhere familiar. And what we're going to do with that is let it remind us that that's not where we stay either.
Being able to be back in that space with a new and fresh mind and a renewed spirit of how to really build in this house. There's just been so much growth in the short amount of time that we've been in there, because it's been, I think, a couple months? That's it.
So the Anomaly series was a series where there were several individuals that is key team of our church, amazing individuals sharing their testimony and how those stories impacted them and what God was speaking to them through those experiences.
That showed where the leaders in our church came from and how they got to where they are now. And they were real about it, you know, and that's the other thing I love about People Church is people are real. And we need that, to see the ups and downs, to see the challenges, to see that when God calls you, it's not a linear path.
It motivates me to know their journey and to see that they came through on the other side.
The moment it hit us in church with all those testimony coming, realigned so much with what we were going through personally at that time.
You know, Elizabeth's water ended up breaking 3 months early. We ended up going to the hospital or to the emergency room. And so they told us the only way we'd be leaving the hospital was if we had a baby. Marlene ends up speaking and telling her story during that Anomaly series. And
the next Sunday.
Yeah, the next Sunday. And then she ends up giving me a word from stage while I'm sitting there.
And God's definitely doing something in you right now. You may not believe it, but I want you to know that He is. He's meeting you exactly where you're at. Do not hold back.
And I'm in the hospital watching this online, and I'm literally in the hospital with the baby heartbeat on the monitor, watching her give the story of her being in the hospital.
I'm seeing my daughter pretty much like die in my arms. And I did not hold back. I did not hold back. I knew that I could trust God, but I did not hold back in how I felt. I said, God, why? Why, God, is this happening to my daughter? But I know that you are good and you work all things for good, and I'm gonna trust you again. I'm gonna double down and commit to what you said.
The next Sunday was the next day, and that's when Chris and Oz was gonna share their testimony.
Living the dream is very different to dreaming the dream.
Yes.
Every yes that you say in passion is just a maybe until it's tested.
You just can't give up, and we wanted to give up so many times.
And our yes became deeper and it became more meaningful, and we have a deeper faith in knowing that God's gonna move regardless of the outcome.
We wrap up that series in Anomaly, and just a couple weeks later, despite what the doctors had told us initially and despite everything that medically made sense, they ended up releasing Elizabeth from the hospital, and that's why she's able to sit here today.
Yeah.
And the baby is doing great. Even when we went back to the doctor and they were saying, like, I'm not a believer in the bag resealing or your water not breaking anymore, but I can't explain what's happened. Like, I can't tell you medically how this would be possible. Just to have that, like, testimony did so much in both of us.
People Church is real, they're vulnerable, they're honest about their struggle, but they also fear God and love God, that really know Jesus and love Him and love His people. And I can build a life in a community like that.
I'm grateful for this church. I'm grateful to have this kind of community who support us from our lows of lows and highs of highs.
That's right.
Praise God.
I've never seen another church do life like People Church does. I think about all of the lives in Chicago, millions and millions of people, young people, that have come to the city in search of the land of hope. And every service at the end, we always say it, right? Is, do you want that land of hope, right? In Jesus. Do you want that? The young lady in the last service that I was in that sat next to me, first time I'd ever seen her, I saw her come in with some friends and she sat down right beside me. And I know you're not supposed to open your eyes during the prayer and the raising of the hands, but I totally did a spirit peek, you know, just one of those little things. And her hand went up right next to me. It was off the charts amazing. And it was just so clear to me. It's like, that's why we do it. Jesus to people, people to Jesus.
I'm so excited to see how God is going to move this year because he's so faithful. And I think that if we come expecting, he's going to match that times 1,000. He always does more than we could ever ask or think.
God is definitely not done, and he is still moving.
For me, 2022 was just permission to go into 2023 with more boldness, more faith, knowing that God's not going to stop.
I feel going into 2023 that this is going to be one of the biggest years that the church is going to have, not only our church, but the church as a whole.
I am just so hopeful for the new year in 23. I want to be that person that says yes to Jesus, that Isaiah 6 moment. Here I am, Lord, send me.
We are super excited for what's coming next. We are just 5 months here, and we are very proud to be part of this community. We are super happy to have found this church. We have high expectations about 2023. We want to be more involved in church, and I believe that God will move even more towards that.
We get to build this. What a privilege and an honor that God has chosen each individual volunteer, staff member to build this church. This isn't the end, it's just the beginning.
I think God is going to show his faithfulness to the house that has endured so much. Any house, any people that can continue to move with power against resistance, God shows up for those people.
I think we're going to see a lot of freedom, a lot of faith, a lot of boldness, very unapologetic in our relationship with Jesus. 2023 is going to be the best year yet.
I don't think the leaders of the house are ready for the abundance that he's about to bring. The difference a smile makes, those are seeds being sown. And those seeds are going to manifest into massive trees, massive fruit. They're going deep down in the roots.
Same God, new move. I believe that's what God is about this year.
I believe that God's got greater. I believe our best days are still ahead of us.
I'm believing that this year is going to be full of joy, full of hope, full of laughter, full of love. And I'm believing for more and more people to find out about this amazing place that I call home, that I'm lucky to be a part of. There's this song that we used to sing back in my old church. We anticipate the inevitable supernatural move of God. So that's what I'm looking forward to this year.